All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We're excited you're here for the second of 6 listening sessions on the region's food system that will help inform the 2021 Food System Action Plan. If it's possible and if you feel comfortable, we encourage you to have your camera on, but try and keep yourself muted when you're not speaking to the group. This meeting, as you just heard, will be recorded, and we'll follow up with a feedback email with resources, a link to the recording, materials that were shared here, and ways to stay engaged on this effort. So Trish, would you like to say anything before we go to introductions?
Thank you, Grace. Just really excited that everybody is here today. Grace, this says careers in food and ag, but we're really talking about food viability. That was just to see if people were paying attention. That's okay. But food and ag careers are important. We had that meeting yesterday, and we know that the workforce issues are really important for the overall viability of the ag system. Yes, Paul. So today we are going to talk about the viability of ag. The project is supported by the Sacramento Region Community Foundation, so we're really grateful to have their support. It's great. Grace mentioned it's an update of a plan that we did with many partners back in 2015. So the world has changed, and here we are, but a lot of critical issues that we want to deal with and touch on the viability of ag today. So we'll get started with some introductions, and then I'll give you a little bit more background on our process today. So thanks for joining, everybody. Go ahead, Grace.
Thank you, Trish. And yeah, apologies. This is the viability of ag session. So we're going to do introductions, name, organization, and what project or activity that you're working on as it relates to the viability of ag. So I'm just going to go down the list, and hopefully I don't miss anyone who pops on in. So first, I will go to Anna Toll.
Hi, I'm Anna Toll. I work for the Center for Land-Based Learning in Woodland, and the program that I work with is our beginning farm manager apprenticeship program. So I'm interested in workforce development and ag education. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next I will go to Elena.
Hi, Elena Carolina, Executive Director, Sustainable Solana. We are your neighbors. And I know the county is not a part of this planning efforts, but we also undertaken a similar exercise here in the county. And all the issues you're discussing today and in other sessions are very important to us. So I hope I could listen to and maybe contribute. And I'm looking forward to meet with Trish in August, I believe, to discuss the potential of expanding these efforts to the region.
All right, thank you. And next, Becca Whitman.
Good morning, everyone. Through various community partnerships, we are here to learn and listen more about the workforce development opportunities and hurdles and all that good stuff. So thanks for having us.
All right, and I will move on to Brian Newman.
Good morning. I'm Brian Newman Lindsay. I'm here with the Division of Land Resource Protection at the Department of Conservation. So we're very invested in like natural working lands initiatives and sustainable agriculture. I don't actually work very closely on our agricultural programs, but we have community support and local conservation programs that I work on. So I'm just curious to hear what y'all are talking about and do some listening and learning myself.
Great, thank you. And David?
Hey there, everyone. I'm David Ogilvie with Wilson Farms and Ogilvie Moreau and Vintners. The activity I do is farming. I'm a fourth generation farmer, and I've got a couple wine labels, mainly Silk Wine Company out of Clarksburg. And I'm also on the Food and Ag Committee for the Sacramento Metro Chamber with Trish, and where we are developing papers and strategies for our cap-to-cap program, advocating for agriculture in the region. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And next, Emma Burke.
Hi, I'm Emma with Alchemist CDC, and I manage our CalFresh at Farmers Markets program. So a lot of our work is supporting our food insecure neighbors as well as our local farming community.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Gail Feenstra.
Hi, everybody. Gail Feenstra here. I'm the director of the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, part of ANR Cooperative Extension. And we do a lot of food systems projects, working with small and mid-scale growers, and a number of food system assessments, one of them in the Sacramento region with the Sacramento Regional Food System Partnership.
Thank you, Gail. And Howard.
Okay, Howard Lewis with Cosumnes River College, teach ag business. We're in the process of launching our mechanized ag technology certificate, which is basically a maintenance mechanics, either in the food sector or in terms of farming operations. And we're also in the process of developing a food safety certificate.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I'm with the Health Education Council here in West Sacramento. I am a new hire, so I'm just chiming in to learn more about others and about this subject.
Thank you. And Mike Schremer.
Hi, this is Mike Schremer with California Capital. We provide business training and assistance to small businesses and microenterprise, including agriculture and food-based businesses. So very interested to listen in today.
Great. And Morgan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan Chow. I am a planner with the Delta Stewardship Council, and I'm helping with the agriculture component of our Delta Adapts initiative for the adaptation strategy. So I'm interested in learning more about the agricultural adaptation component and ag viability. Thanks.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you. And Neka.
Hello, everyone. My name is Neka Uba. I'm the Food Security Coordinator with Health Education Council. I'm here to learn and listen more about in terms of the agricultural aspect. We are partnering with Center for Land-Based Learning. They are helping offer like a mobile food farmers market at some of the affordable housing communities that Health Education serves in West Sacramento. So I would just love to learn more. Thank you.
Great. And next we have Paul.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Paul Towers with CAF, Community Alliance of Family Farmers. Yeah, we're a statewide organization though based in Davis and Yolo County, and I live in Sacramento County. And yeah, provide support, a variety of on-the-ground services, as well as policy advocacy for particularly small and mid-scale growers. So that's our background. And then I guess I'm also less wearing my hat for Sacramento Food Policy Council today. As Gail already said, is engaged in a kind of county level regional food system partnership project, looking at an assessment and an action plan at the county level around the food system. So very intertwined and related to this work.
Thank you, Paul. And Renee?
Good morning, Renee DeVera-Oki, Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We're the long-range planning organization for the 6 county region. I'm the Rural Urban Connections Strategy Program Manager, so kind of overseeing ag in the region, natural working lands, and a little bit of climate adaptation.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Hey, Sarah Bernal. I am the program manager for the West Sacramento Urban Farm Program, which is a part of the California Farm Academy through the Center for Land-Based Learning. Yeah, 5 sites in West Sac that are all beginning farmer business incubators. And as NECA mentioned, the new mobile farmers market that we launched in West Sac to serve affordable housing complexes in the area.
Thank you. And Shanna?
Hi, yeah, I work for California Rangeland Trust. So our, entire premise is trying to keep ranchers ranching through conservation. So making sure that their agricultural businesses are viable is pretty top of our list. And we connect them to resources to support that, especially after they've conserved with us, because we want to be able to keep them doing the good stuff they're doing on the land. So.
Thank you. And Sayili?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sayili, and I work for California Capital Financial Development Corporation. I am a colleague of Mike Schremer. We provide access to capital and small business counseling in the Sacramento area. I'm here to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. And Shannon?
Hi, everyone. This is Shauna. I think Shannon already introduced herself. I am with the California Department of Conservation's Division of Land Resource Protection, and I work primarily on program development and grant management in our Sustainable Agricultural Lands Protection Program. So we provide funding for agricultural land conservation, and we're exploring how our program can better support land access for underserved farmers and ranchers.
Thank you. And Thomas?
Yeah, hi, good morning. Thomas with Kitchen Table Advisors, and our core programming is providing one-on-one coaching and business advising to farmers who own their own businesses, and we also do work at kind of, trying to reduce the barriers for advanced beginner farmers around capital, land, and markets. And we work between Salinas, Sonoma, and Sacramento.
Great, thank you, Thomas. And did I miss anyone? All right. Well, thank you. I think that we can move on now to our first Mentimeter question. So if you're able to use your phone or your computer, sorry, to go to that link, I will show you all. This is a way that we're going to be getting audience input throughout the session. So that link will remain the same, and you can also use your phone and enter it in using that code 6304-0313 by going to menti.com. So if you go there, you can go ahead and enter what sector you represent to kind of get an idea of who we have in the room. And then from there, we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. This Menti service will come back later on in the session. The link again will remain the same, so it'll just be a refresh of that. Looks like we have a lot of nonprofit and CBOs here. Yeah, feel free to enter it into the chat too, if that's easier for you. All right, well, thank you. I think we can, we'll go ahead and leave it open, but we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. Thank you all for participating. It looks like we have a lot of nonprofits and CBOs in the room, so that's great. All right. All right, Trish, on to you.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of the purpose of the project and also I think many of you know Valley Vision. We're a organization, a nonprofit civic leadership organization that's been working in the region more than 25 years on kind of in a stewardship model to help the region and regional partners work on long-term issues for the good of the region, kind of a triple bottom line approach with a strong economy and equitable community and a strong environment. So the food system, of course, really fits into that. And we have longstanding working to support the viability of ag and also the communities that need healthy, good food access. And then I'll talk about a couple of planning efforts that kind of highlight the impact of the food and ag as a cluster, an economic driver for the region. But the Food System Action Plan was first prepared in 2015 through support from the Sacramento Region Community Foundation, and it was really intended to be a roadmap for action to kind of help align all the great assets that we had in the community, but to get us more strategically focused. And we had 4 goal areas that targeted things like supporting ag at all levels, increasing access to local healthy grown foods, increasing food literacy, and improving food security. And we worked with a lot of partners like the Council of Governments that map food deserts and lots of data points on where we stood in the food system. And the outcome of that was that the Community Foundation really made some strategic investments into the emergency food system to help make that system more efficient and able to reach targeted residents and reduce levels of food insecurity. So a lot has happened in the last 6 years. We've had the intention the last couple of years to update the plan. And then of course, COVID happened. So there's just been huge disruptions in the system, but some new partnerships and innovations and opportunities. And this is this process has led to a way to try to update the plan with a very strategic focus of developing a regional investment strategy so that we can really try to elevate and identify key priorities, key issues that we want to address, and opportunities and funding recommendations, both to guide the Community Foundation's investments, but also to elevate the view into the food system and the opportunities to support our nonprofit sector and our employers and businesses. And this is partly because our region is very underinvested in compared to other regions that have a lot of food system assets from a philanthropic side. But the new opportunities are also with lots of funding coming in from the federal and state levels, not just to deal with the impacts of the pandemic and recovery, but kind of address some big systemic issues. So there's a lot of opportunity now, and that's what we want to do today is get your input on some of these key project and financing priorities and really look to help shape some recommendations for financing strategies and mechanisms to support the food system. And we are working with partners like Alchemist and CAF and the Sacramento Food Policy Council on food mechanisms. They're also looking at those things. So our goal is to generate information and data that can help support the partners too. So we've been doing a lot of research on key kind of facts, shaping facts of the food system. And now we're in convening mode. We're convening 6 listening sessions this week and next week on core topical areas. We're also talking to some key stakeholders like the food banks and the hospitals and schools about opportunities for things like institutional procurement, partnerships that are emerging or solidifying. And then we're going to pull everything together and present an action plan to the foundation in September, also Farm to Fork Month, so we can celebrate our food system. And then after that, the foundation will do a little bit more work on looking at some financing mechanisms based on the recommendations. Also to let you know, Valley Vision is conducting a food system resiliency poll with Sacramento State. We've been doing a polling series for the last few years. So the poll is out in the field now, and that will look at attitudes and behaviors around the food system on the part of residents. So that will be ready in September too. This is the first time we've done a poll that's actually aligned to a specific planning effort. So that should be really help put the focus on the food system as well. Next slide, please, Grace. So we wanted to just let you know that we're aligning and collaborating with other key regional and local planning efforts that are going on, and we're coordinating with a lot of our state and federal partners, some of whom are going to be on the calls. So the key activities that are going on right now include the Sacramento Food Policy Council's Sacramento County Food Assessment, Environmental Justice Element, and Paul and Gail Feenstra, as you heard, are working on that along with other partners. The California Endowment had a 10-year investment in building healthy communities, primarily in Sacramento, South Sacramento area, and some regional work. And so the Healthy Food for All Collaborative has been documenting the outcomes of the last 10 years and looking at where we take all this body of knowledge and work and collaboration, and where do we go next, including looking at financing mechanisms. Both the Food Policy Council and the HVAC are very focused on a sustainable healthy food financing fund and seeing if cities and counties will invest in those also. So that's part of the policy agenda. We're also pleased to be coordinating and part of the team with SACOG. Renee mentioned the Rural Urban Connection Strategy, which has done really innovative, groundbreaking planning work connecting our urban and rural areas over the last more than 10 years. There's a new project called Coordinated Rural Opportunities Program under RUCS that is through a Sustainable Ag Lands Conservation Grant from the Department of Conservation. So we'll be really looking at the needs of agriculture from an infrastructure standpoint. It's really great to put the planning focus on the ag economy. And then that's parallel with a Yolo County grant. And then the umbrella framework that Valley Vision is working on with several regional partners, including SACOG, the SAC Metro Chamber, and Greater SAC Economic Council, is our regional economic strategy, which is also federally certified. And it really includes a high-level focus on the food and ag sector as an economic driver. And under that, we've been able to embed initiatives that support the food system for things like institutional procurement, food incubators, food hubs, infrastructure that helps aggregate and get food to market, and supports farming and agriculture through innovation and trying to make the food system sustainable. So those are some of the planning efforts. And if you have more efforts, please, things to connect with, please put them in the chat or let us know. Next slide, please, Grace. So this session is going to cover a lot of topics: farmland preservation, access to land, especially for new and emerging farmers, urban agriculture, broadband and capital access, market channels and supply chains, some of which had some interesting dynamics happen in the last year and a half, and other related topics. So market supply chains include things like institutional procurement for our schools and hospitals. So we did note that we did talk a lot about the labor and workforce issues yesterday, but please bring them up if that's relevant for you today. Next slide, please, Grace. So we just wanted to give everybody on these sessions a little bit of overview, so we're all working off kind of the same framework for some of our facts. So the food system, the food and ag cluster, includes farming, ranching, forestry, but also value-added food processing, packing and distribution, and lots of support services, including environmental services. And so these are all part of an overarching cluster that is a major regional economic driver. We benefit from having one of only 5 Mediterranean climates in the world, so it makes our agriculture very high quality. We have innovative farmers, we have UC Davis assets, we have 1.5 million acres in farmland, we have almost 6,700 farms, and we looked at the Census of Agriculture from USDA, and fortunately most farms seem to be sustaining at least the number of farms. We're not having a lot of attrition so far. Crop value that's coming right off the farm at the farm gate is $2 billion. That undergirds this huge economy, more than $12 billion in overall economic impact through all of these other activities, and more than 55,000 jobs. And this doesn't include the jobs in our hospitality and tourism sector, which is really huge, with especially our brand is America's Farm to Fork capital, but it includes not just agritourism, but our whole hospitality sector. And then there are jobs in nutrition services and education that are not captured, that are also opportunities. Today, we were listening on the City of Sacramento's health and food access call, and a lot of the nonprofits, the food banks and paratransit and others do all need drivers and workers in addition to volunteers. So there's a lot of ways that the food system touches our employment sector as well. So next slide, please, Grace. So today's food system, here are some of our challenges. The average age of a farmer is 57.5 years. And according to USDA, 32% of our producers are new and beginning farmers, but that really should not be thought of as really just young people. The average age of these new farmers is 46 years old. I think that's some of the demographic that the Center for Land-Based Learning touches. The average age of a highly skilled manufacturing and food processing worker is 56 years. So we do have a huge pipeline issue, current skills gaps and future pipeline. 43 to 48% of the farms in El Dorado and Placer counties operate on less than 9 acres. So obviously the income and revenues will be lower compared to say 18% in Yolo County. So bigger farms are average size in other parts of the region. 83% of our farms in Sacramento County lack internet access, and that number varies, but it kind of rides around that level or a little bit higher. We know this because Valley Vision manages the Connected Capital Area Broadband Consortium, and we've been working with partners like David Ogilvy for years to try to get broadband in our rural areas. And we can't connect to markets, but we also can't use ag technologies to make the food system more sustainable without the internet connectivity. And not to mention all the things that happened in the pandemic, including remote learning and telehealth and telemedicine. So really important for ag and rural viability. Next slide, please, Grace. So one of our big challenges that has persisted, and the Sacramento Bee is covering food insecurity this last couple of days. Even before COVID, 1 in 6 children were food insecure, and now it's higher than that. It's 1 in 5. And we have a great abundance, but we have huge challenges because we have high levels of food insecurity, higher than state and national averages. And there's an increasing emphasis on nutrition security because you might have access to food, but it might not be all that healthy. So how do we deal with this great abundance and this great gap and disparity? And then just in the pandemic, of course, we've seen a huge increase in the millions of pounds of food distributed and meals and people served. In our emergency food systems, really incredibly stepped up to serve the need and pivot to all kinds of changes in distribution, loss of volunteers, really some great new partnerships with the school districts and others, UC Davis Health. But one area of focus that was mentioned in the Sacramento Bee article today is that our CalFresh enrollment is really variable. It ranges from 35% in Yolo County to 81% in Sacramento County of eligible potential participants. And at the core, if we got everybody signed up, it would drive more than $150 million annually into our local economy with an even bigger economic impact. So, you know, Alchemist and others are working, Health Education Council, how can we really up those enrollments and look at lots of ways to support both farmers and people in need. Also, 40% of the food along the food chain goes to waste. So food recovery efforts are increasing, and we're really happy to have a lot of our state partners that are going to be engaged with us, Cal Recycle and Department of Conservation and CARB and others that will help us improve our supply chain here and support our food banks and the food recovery. I know a lot of our grocery stores, Becca's here from Rayleigh's, that the grocery stores have really been leaders in this food recovery effort as well. Just to note, one of our priorities is really want to focus on institutional procurement, having hospitals, schools, and others buy as much as they can locally, because the economic impact is really great, and children learn where their food comes from, and we support our local farmers. And so we have a lot of assets to pull together. We just want to acknowledge the growing environmental challenges that we're living with all every day: drought, fire, heat, flood risks, and these huge changes that we're dealing with, which greatly affect agriculture through climate change. And happy to have partners on to help us address some of those issues. And we know it brings great stressors to farmers, and also there's a lot of compliance and regulatory issues that they need to deal with. So next slide, please, Grace. So our goal is to ensure thriving agriculture for all, and a food system that works for all, and a health promoting food system. So these are just illustrative. We're going to ask you to flesh these out, of course, for us. But in addition to the climate related challenges, we know that there's a lot of pressure to convert farmland to housing, and SACOG and others are really trying to ensure that we have sustainable land use patterns, and we keep ag in production and viable. Access to land is a big issue, especially for new and beginning farmers and BIPOC farmers. So Kitchen Table Advisors in CAF and others are helping with those in California Capital, but really want to have concerted strategy to support kind of the work too, that like the Center of Land-Based Learning is helping when they get people through the Farm Academy and others. How can people farm? Broadband, we've mentioned. Capital access is a huge issue, and we'll be able to talk about those and just other issues that you want to elevate. And then our opportunities, some of the drivers for us is the increasing, always growing demand for local foods and support for our local food system as America's farm to fork capital. How do we really deepen that beyond, our wonderful chefs and farmers to support the whole food system and show that that's what farm to fork means, is equity in our food system. Institutional procurement, we mentioned, that's a really big market opportunity. It keeps our dollars local, and it supports our farmers and food distributors and food producers. And Sac City Unified, for instance, has built a new central kitchen, and they're going to be doing some joint procurement or serve as a vendor for UC Davis Health. So we've got some real great innovations happening there that we want to invest in and solidify. And then there's a lot of new state and federal funding resources coming. So we want to make sure we're aligned and ready so that we can support our growers and others in the food system to take advantage of that. So next slide, please, Grace. That's our background. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Grace, and she's going to take us through some Mentimeter questions, and love to get your input and ideas. So, and we've got a few new people on. I see Judy Notley from the Air Resources Board, and James Wigginton from Downey Brand, and Brenda Ruiz from SAC Food Policy Council. So I hope I got everybody, and welcome. Thanks, Grace.
All right, thank you, Trish. So again, folks, it will be the same link. There may be a little pop-up that says that the slide has changed, so you can just go to the next slide. And all of your answers are anonymous, so please be honest, and the answers will appear here. So Trish talked about some of the challenges, and so we'd like to hear about some of the other challenges that you see in this sector. And welcome, David. It looks like you just joined us. All right, so lack of access for first generation farmers, loss of viable farmland, seeing a couple of water security and water storage drought again. Our region is very unique in that we have droughts and floods, so we have to face it all. Stable, affordable, equitable land tenure to productive lands. Again, water access, global economic pressure. Loss of processing facilities, significant and meaningful markets, projected impacts from climate change, again, the extreme heat events, droughts, floods, wildfire, access to funds to adapt to climate impacts. I would also add air quality in there too. Has been within the last decade, a more prominent climate impact. And do any folks want to either expand on their answer in chat or, feel free to, you can verbally speak up too. We'd love to hear from you.
Grace, I think I would be great if Morgan could just give us a verbal update on what she put in the chat too. Pretty good encompassing of topics. Morgan, would you mind talking about what you mentioned in the chat?
Sure. I put a few things in the chat. The first was just in the response to the first comment on more regional efforts, that I was just sharing that we, as part of our adaptation strategy that we've started, we have a specific component that is seeking input from agricultural stakeholders in the Delta. So we're hoping to develop a suite of approaches to address what I just put in the Menti, which is the projected impacts, climate impacts on the agricultural sector. So we're hoping to develop those strategies with local experts in the Delta Ag community and really understanding the values and priorities around these impacts to crop yields, really understand the current use of the suite of climate smart programs that are existing and maybe some barriers to some of those funds. And then also information and data needs for more climate smart farming. And then as was touched on in your background, just also addressing those non-climate related challenges and barriers. And then lastly, like what types of outcomes from a strategy would be the most useful for land use and crop decisions.
Thank you very much, Morgan. And I really noticed the idea of the changes in the crop patterns, because I know that that's a big topic. And in the past, RUCS has looked at some of those changes in terms of meeting more local market demands, because the data has shown that we don't consume very much most of the food that we consume is not grown locally. And that's not unusual, but there's been a lot of efforts, of course, to increase that. But some of that was providing information to growers on perhaps some shifts in crops. But now there's this whole big new variable of what's the impact on crops and yields with all these climate events and changes. So Renee, maybe that's another area of research for the RUCS toolkit.
Yeah, that definitely sounds kind of interesting. For those of you that aren't familiar with RUCS, I'll drop in our website link there, because we've done several case studies in the past that are related to this, and Valley Vision's been a big partner in that. One of our new initiatives is what we're calling our Coordinate Rural Opportunity Plan. So some of the information you're typing in here will actually help inform our project on that.
Great, thank you. Okay, that's a lot of good input here. Thank you very much. And I should say that when we synthesize all this data, we're gonna want to go deeper and loop back with some of you to kind of flesh out what the strategies can be for some of these topics and challenges. Go ahead, Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Trish. This one is a scale, so you can kind of ping the little scale bar from 1 to 5. The first question is, do you agree or disagree that this region effectively supports the viability of agriculture? And then do you agree or disagree that the region is effectively planning for the future of agriculture? And as Trish mentioned, we'll be consolidating all of these answers. And for the open-ended questions like the last one, the majority of them, I think the remaining ones will be open-ended such as that. So if you could be as specific as possible, that would really help us. Thank you, Renee, for popping that in the chat. All right, looks like we're right in the middle for the region effectively supporting the viability of ag, but a little under for effectively planning for the future of ag. So that's an interesting difference there.
I think that's kind of a call to action.
Yeah. Does anyone want to comment on this in particular, maybe why they put the answer that they did, or maybe expanding upon some answers that you put in the last one that relate to this?
This is Paul. One just, I guess, nuance I'd add to like how I answer it is, if you break it down at the county by county level, which is where I tend to think about where decisions or support is happening, I think there's a lot of difference between counties. In the 4 counties we're talking about, Sacramento is not the same as Yolo, is not the same as Placer. These are really different counties in terms of the types of support that they're providing and what's being provided within those counties. So just offer like a little bit of like nuance and distinguish. I think it affects like my number is some average probably of all of those things. And probe each county, it would look really different.
That's a great point, Paul. And we had some background work done by graduate students at UC Davis under Dr. Brinkley's work, and they looked at planning documents across the counties and found a lot of variability. A lot of the general plans are old. And well, Renee, with SACOG, we had a meeting with the ag commissioners the other day, and some of them mentioned that too, that what might have been good 10 years ago to say, let's convert for housing is not a priority today, but the plans are not up to date. So how can we ensure that our planning documents align with being able to support that? So it's a really important point, Paul, that you mentioned the variability and how things are elevated, or what the priorities are in the plans. And I know you are working with Sac County plans, and including the environmental justice, but how does that translate to the land use plans too?
And it looks like David has his hand up.
Yeah, hi. So I will say that I do feel like we, I'm in Yolo County, and Yolo County, I would say generally is very ag supportive, but then we're in Clarksburg, and being right next to Sacramento and dealing with some, I guess where I was kind of right there with the group. I think that regionally there is the support of agriculture and the viability. There's a lot of talk about that, but then like Trish said, there's a call to action, and I don't see the effective planning that goes into what everyone is saying about the support of agriculture. And then I really think water plays into a big part of that. And regionally, putting measures in place that's going to move water from one valuable farming area and move it to a different farming area doesn't support the regional agriculture, being that this region is where, and I'm specifically talking about the tunnel project, and all that, if that goes through, will be really hurting agriculture in the Delta. And that's a very beautiful, very productive ag region. And moving water south to another ag region that has its own water problems for sure, doesn't really show a support of agriculture in this region. So I think there's other measures that can be put in place around water storage during the winter, and then of course climate smart agriculture. Those measures being put in place, and not just, of course, agriculture is not the it's a huge water user, but with a great purpose to feed the country and the world. And but doing focusing on strict water management throughout the state is I think a better focus, and not, I feel like a lot of times farmers get a bad rap and we're just wasting water, and we're not wasting water. We're growing food. So I don't know, I'll leave it there. That's sorry for the dump. I'm actually farming right now. I'm working and I'm listening on the phone, and I wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Thank you, David. That is much food for thought. And another conversation, and David's been part of our ag tech pilot work for broadband in the Delta and in Yolo County, is how if we have connectivity, we can manage resources better because we'll have the tools. So it's kind of all of a piece. But to your point, David, it's a big picture approach on resource management and elevating the critical importance of agriculture in our region and to the state. So thank you. And does anybody else want to comment on David's points?
Looks like James has their hand up too.
Hi, thank you. So Trish, we've had an opportunity in months past to talk a little bit about food insecurity and the farm to fork movement here in Sacramento. And we came to a number of conclusions, one of which is we really want to increase the movement of local produce to local consumers. And the more that we talked with local stakeholders, and the more that we learned about the challenges and the headwinds that farmers are facing in this area, it really drew into focus two things for me. It's the number one, the difficulties that we face due to climate change, and also the difficulties that we face due to international trade. So I have a trade background. I'm an attorney. I worked at the U.S. Court of International Trade for 2 years. So the international trade system is something that's very interesting to me. And what I realized is that our food system really is internationalized. We as consumers expect to have avocados in December. We expect to have strawberries in October. And this desire for this kind of food year round makes it very difficult to satisfy customer demand locally throughout the year. And, in addition to that, climate change is making things difficult. We've had water difficulties. We've had heat difficulties. As an attorney at Downey Brand, we have a lot of grape growers who are clients. They're facing a lot of difficulties with smoke right now as well. And so I think, this is sort of the crazy idea, and I hope no one hangs up on me for saying this, but I think indoor agriculture might be something worth considering in any long-term plan. And what I mean by that is investing in indoor agriculture, thinking about its implications, because it really eliminates a lot of these problems. It uses 95% less water than traditional agriculture. You don't have to worry about seasons. You don't have to worry about pesticides. The shelf life of food grown indoors is far longer because it's not being shipped from Mexico. It's not being shipped from Honduras. And so I think, as I think about everything that we're trying to do here to shift water to, come up with, climate mitigating measures. Sometimes I wonder if what we really need in the long run is a dramatic advance in our technology. And I would love to see Sacramento at the forefront of that, because right now the forefront of this is in the Bay Area. There are a number of indoor ag companies working out of the Bay Area, and all they're really doing right now is growing kale for people who work at Google. And I think we can do much, much better. And I think Sacramento has all the tools to do that. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I feel like, you know, what we really need in the long run is a dramatic change in the way that we grow food, because the world is not getting any cooler and people's tastes are not going to change. We're still going to expect avocados in December. So those are my thoughts, and thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, James. It's really important for us to have, you know, open the flaps and think of all these things. And I want to note that I did learn this terminology a couple of weeks ago, climate controlled environment agriculture, which is indoor growing. And we've had some forays of companies trying to experiment, but I think Gotham Greens is going to be opening soon in Solano County. And I think perhaps our path and something to think about is not an either or, but additive, because if you think of new additive growing models, they could help supply, you know, food for schools or hospitals year round, fresh produce and things like that. So I think the innovation side of where the future of ag is going, how can we take advantage of that while still maintaining the integrity of the people who want to stay in farming and all the other applications and importance of the land. The use of the land is a working landscape. So thank you, James, for that insight. So, okay, we're going to go on to the next question, but I should say that in addition to these 6 input sessions, we're going to keep discussion going on these topics and would love to hear from people about the desire to be able to do that. So thank you.
Thanks, Trish. And this next question is, what are the region's agricultural sector strengths and assets? So programs, best practices. All right, so we're seeing a couple mentions of the colleges in the area, the UC Davis Agricultural Research, Farm to Fork, Prime Farmland. Trish mentions we're 1 in 5 Mediterranean climates here. CAF and the Center for Land-Based Learning. Again, Farm to Fork marketing and programs, relatively strong water sources, partnerships. Again, that farmer training, Center for Land-Based Learning and Soil-Borne Farms. Network of supportive organizations. Do you folks want to verbalize any of the strengths or assets that they put down or that they see in the region? See the Center for Land-Based Learning mentioned a couple times, CAF mentioned a couple times, Kitchen Table Advisors. If any of those representatives from those organizations want to speak up about what makes your program so strong and great, please do. This is a time for bragging.
Hey there, can everyone hear me? This is Sarah from CLBL.
Yes, hi Sarah.
Sorry. Sorry, I was out in the field. So actually, even though I run the Urban Farm program, I'm mostly excited about, in terms of, you know, for the region, the apprenticeship program. that we have, who is being represented now by Anna, is here today. But just getting involved in training incumbent workers to be farm managers, I think, is been overlooked for far too long. I mean, I'm not an expert in that field, but I feel really encouraged by bringing up, a lot of our farm workers into management positions and really curating the skills and knowledge that they already have, which I know David Ogilvy here did on his property, on his farm. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really excited to see more incumbent workers get involved in management positions and carrying out the legacy of the farms that they maybe have, spent half a lifetime working for. Massive opportunities there to capitalize on the knowledge that these folks already have, and to increase them in positions of leadership and farm management. So, and then with regards to urban ag, I feel relatively encouraged by a few new funding pools, USDA's UAIP, Urban Ag Innovations and Production grants. I think that there's some potential there to start looking at the value, not just in terms of, pounds of produce, because I think ultimately that's not really what we're talking about with urban ag, but more so with, reconnecting the ever urbanizing population with the realities of food production and the value that brings in terms of even starting to imagine a world where people can conceive of eating seasonally because they actually see crops growing in their neighborhoods, and they can actually identify what is actually in season. So maybe challenging that notion that we should all have avocados and year round. Like I'm not sure that that's where I want things to go. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Thanks for listening.
Sarah, I do appreciate you saying that about the apprenticeship program, which I'm a part of. I am not usually one to toot my own horn, but I agree that an incredibly, a pathway that has an incredible amount to grow and, incredible potential impact is the incumbent worker pathway. For those who may have been working in agriculture for years, typically in low paying positions, and, to give them the opportunity to kind of grow their career through training and through experience, additional leadership and management is really exciting. So thanks for tooting my horn for me.
Thank you both. And Sarah, what you mentioned about the eating seasonally, I think that there's a lot of rich topics for us to talk about where our food system goes. I saw the note in the chat also, Paul. Maybe you could mention the work to try to support the smaller farmers and the BIPOC farmers that are trying to, have stronger local food markets. Do you want to comment on that, Paul?
Oh, sure. And I'm sure, Thomas or Sarah could also jump in as well, and others. No, I mean, I think just say that, yeah, I think one, we've seen a lot of, the challenges through the course of the pandemic itself, right? Sort of just oscillating markets for everyone. And so that's just been a challenge in its own right. But I think, yeah, I mean, just to put a point on it, James, to sort of your question, a point earlier, I mean, most of the smaller and mid-scale vegetable producers and some fruit producers we work with are, selling to pretty local markets in Northern California, Sacramento region. Very little, except for some of the nut producers, are selling to any sort of, international markets. So I think, yeah, I think there's, I've been pleased by some efforts in our, in our region. Yolo, I think, and Placer actually do a much better job of marketing local. I think Sacramento, doesn't do as good a job. There's a lot of talk about farm to fork, and there's not been kind of the level of investment that I think is necessary to support local growers. I think there's a lot of increasing capacity and desire there. A lot of opportunity maybe with the new universal school food a bill that was just our budget that was just passed in the state legislature. Maybe there'll be more purchasing power through K-12 schools. There's obviously more appetite through other institutional purchasing. And I think there remains a lot of opportunity and appetite in direct purchasing, direct market CSAs. We've seen the growth over the past year in a lot of CSAs. So I think there remains a lot of opportunity. I think it's just making sure that, particularly the emergency food system, continues to support local procurement. I think that's one of the big gaps we've seen is the emergency food system, when we sort of kick it into gear, tends to go back to the lowest price point, which often tends to favor the largest or international growers. And how do we keep those dollars local in our region, reinvesting in our farmers? And so, happy to share a lot more. But I think there remains a lot of opportunity to continue to support the region's growers. And, I'm sure Thomas could write an essay on it and explain more, as well as Sarah. So just happy to say there's lots of growers, and thanks to CLBL's training and Soilborns and others, there are a lot more folks we have some of the highest growth, I would say, just anecdotally, because I don't have the USDA numbers to back it up, of new farmers coming into our region, right? And so how are we going to ensure that they have market opportunities if they're in their first few years of production, right? Particularly in Yolo and Sacramento County, where a lot of those growers are coming through CLBL's program. How are we going to make sure that there are places they can both grow and then actually sell to keep them stable, especially through those most fragile sort of first few years of operation? So.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. The USDA data does indicate that we have a higher percentage of kind of new and emerging farmers and producers than the national average. So that's to your point. James, you had your hand up. And one other thing I want to ask after James' comments is that one of the things that is our assets in our region sometimes that we kind of don't think about maybe as explicitly, but we do have, being in the capital, we have the state agencies here and those connections. And so we've got some people on from state agencies. So I'd love to hear from them afterwards about some of their resources that can help us deal with some of these climate change challenges as well. So James, did you want to make a comment there?
Yes. First of all, I appreciate all the comments heard so far, and it certainly, I certainly do not imagine a world where there is no farming in the fields. I think there's just no way that's ever going to happen, and I didn't mean to suggest that indoor farming would somehow take over. I don't think that it ever will. I think the reason that I bring it up in the first place is because I've been maybe a little bit jaded and disappointed with the price issue. Working at Downey Brand, we do a lot of work with grocers, and price is, it seems, in our culture, the driving factor behind what we buy, what we eat. And I guess I'm just a little cynical that people are willing to pay more for local produce than they would be for produce grown far away. And the problem I see is that, California, whether we like it or not, is a very popular destination, and real estate is so darn expensive, and it makes agriculture expensive, which and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's part of the reason that so many people are getting into almonds and other nuts that they can ship abroad, because that's a cash crop that they can sustain. And so I guess, part of the reason that I've maybe fixated a little bit on indoor is because, if we can get the costs down and potentially, make that a viable, as you said, Trish, addition to the agricultural ecosystem, then maybe we can just start to chip away at, at this international system where we're buying everything from so far away, which I see as hugely problematic.
Yeah, thank you. Really lots to think about. And then in a changing dynamic time, it's not easy to be a farmer. So, there are 3 more people that have raised their hands. Let's see. I can't see who they are. Grace, can you see?
Yeah, it looks like Mary had her hand raised, and then David.
Thank you.
Did you want me to start?
Yeah.
Yes, Mary.
So one perspective is looking at what everybody has said on a larger scale of what's going on at policy levels, lobbying levels, and how can a group like Valley Vision work to help farmers. And I'll give an example of a lot of farm loans right now are made based on whether the farmers have met certain criteria. And it may be something like planting a second crop of corn by a certain time, which may not make sense in their area, or using a certain herbicide by a certain time frame. And they may or may not have the funding, one, to do that, and they may or may not believe that that's the right thing to do. So if we were to work together in coalitions to say what is healthy farming and what are the crops that make the most sense to grow in California, to have a diverse set of products for Californian and Nevada and Oregon consumers. And then say, how would we achieve that, and what policies are blocking us from achieving that at a reasonable price? I think we could move the ball forward as opposed to doing individual solutions of, oh, I'll grow almonds, or I'll grow wine grapes, or we'll go to indoor farming. A little bit more unity of discussion and big planning, and then going to the policymakers could be helpful.
Great, thank you, Mary. And I think that is a really important time in the discussion, going back to that, where are we on effective planning? We've got work to do, the call to action piece, and we've got a lot of partnerships, but we're not coherent maybe the way we need to be as a region. So I think, Mary, your suggestions are really valuable. And I'll just put this back in of Renee, thinking of SACOG's role of being a gathering point for some of the planning, and working in partnership. And then we have great partners with UC and UC Co-op Extension and others. So good to think about and try to take into some next steps. David, did you want to comment also?
Yeah, thanks, Trish. There's so much to unpack here, and so I just started writing notes down. But yes, land is expensive when you're buying new land, so it is probably the biggest barrier to new farms or new farmers. And but what hasn't changed so much is when it's a generational farm, a family farm. The land that I farm is no additional cost to me than it was to my grandfather. So that, and this is going back to the comment about local produce costing more. I don't think local produce should cost more. And it's not because California has expensive farmland. It is expensive, again, to the new farmer, but most farmland is not, being sold at the top price right now, or most output on farms is not directly correlated, or the cost of that output is not directly correlated to the actual current price of farmland. So I don't agree with that. And then the other thing is, if it's local, you're not paying all the different middlemen that gets it to the shelf. So and then you're not paying for refrigeration costs as much, and the hauling costs. So there should be an argument, I think, and it should be an interesting study that I haven't seen yet, and it may have already been done, but it'd be an interesting study to see what is the actual cost per unit or per pound of produce when it is coming from Nebraska versus, Delta corn from Nebraska versus corn from the Delta, when at the grocery store shelf in Woodland and or Sacramento for that matter. So and the other way we're talking about, reducing costs of farmers, it's all about ag tech right now. We're doing so much in the field side ag tech to get costs down. And we're talking, to one extreme, autonomous tractors, and we're really actually looking into that now in a big way, and then also different implements in the field that are replacing manual labor. So the manual labor force is a huge cost, the largest cost we have on the farm right now, in vineyard farming. It may be different in other crops, but in grape farming, it is by far our largest cost. So we're doing everything we can in the vineyard to increase our reliance on mechanical, on the latest ag tech, and so that totally goes into the training and education of an educated workforce, professional workforce that can fix and run, do maintenance on these new implements. And then the other thing I wanted to harken back to is food waste. That blew my mind, that slide, 40% food waste. I wonder what percent of food waste through the system, if that changes when food is being sourced locally versus farther away. Is food waste, are we really at 40% food waste when we're local, or where is the waste happening? If you have less middleman, I hope that there'd be less waste. So that was the other thing. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
That's good, David. Thank you. Food waste is all through the system. There have been groups like Refed. I think they were mentioned yesterday. That and others. I know James, with James, we had a conversation with them a while back, and I know others have probably worked with them, but there's been some documentation generally about where it's not so much in the food processing side. They've gotten pretty efficient around food waste and food repurposing. Some of it is in the field, and some of it, I think, is in the consumer end. But it's a really good question about where in the food system and how do we reduce that. And we're going to talk tomorrow about SB 1383, the food recovery requirements through that legislation. And there's already food recovery efforts going on. What kind of infrastructure do you need for that too? Like, you get food from grocery stores, how do you get them to food distribution points? Do you need more cold storage? Do you need refrigerated trucks? Sort of what's the infrastructure we need to make our food system more sustainable? And my dog is weighing in on that. So, but how much is education and awareness too? And then how can that waste be repurposed at least to other good products? But the thing that's amazing about all that food waste is all the energy and resources it takes to grow that food that then is wasted somewhere along the system. So, okay, thank you all. We'll go to the next question.
Thank you, Trish. That was all really good comments, and continue that through the rest of the Mentimeter questions if they arise. So please share any success stories about activities, initiatives, programs relating to the viability of agriculture, preserving farmland, broadband access. We heard earlier from the Center for Land-Based Learning about some of those activities. David, you just mentioned, working on broadband in the field. If you could share, how did that happen, and what do you plan to do with the funds? I know you talked about AI tractors, but maybe some little more in that.
Yeah, you want to talk about that now?
Yes, please.
All right. So when I first came back on the family farm in 2014, we were leaf pulling by hand everywhere, and there's been that's just a very expensive thing to do by hand, and the technology has become available to do it mechanically. And then the biggest thing that the technology has been there for a little while, but the great thing is the understanding of the industry that that has really forced, or the acceptance of mechanical jobs being done mechanically. So wineries, had a real hard time with machine harvested fruit in the 80s and then the 90s. And now it's, 70% of the Napa floor is harvested and going into harvested mechanically and then going into $200 bottles of wine. So they've finally, over 20 years or longer, 40 years, have adopted mechanically harvesting fruit. The adoption of mechanically leaf pulling happened, it feels like overnight comparatively. And now we're looking at suckering mechanically and suckering the trunks and other jobs. So there's been a much broader acceptance to ag tech, which is great to see because that helps the farmer. So mechanically leaf pulling has really helped us a lot. One of the other things I did on our farm was went through a SWEEP program, the State Water Enhancement and something program, I can't remember now. But we were able to use that program to put variable frequency drives on our pumps and then soil moisture probes in our fields to really just know exactly how much water we need to put in each block and just irrigate to the vine's need, not just a set amount every week. So it does get tricky. It varies based on soil type and whatnot, where we have varied soils in some blocks. But that kind of efficiency helps us to where before we'd have to spend the energy to pump a set of flow of water and then put some of it back into the watershed or into the slough, into the river. And so you're using a lot more energy. And then on top of that, now we're saying, hey, we've got the water, it's reaching the root zone. We don't need to go any further. We're not pushing, if we're using fertilizer, we're not pushing the fertilizer down below the root zone where it can't get it. So there's efficiencies happening that way. So yeah, anything we can do to be more efficient farmers is always good for the farmer. And programs like SWEEP really help and to do that, as well as EQIP, which is a federal program. So those programs help us be more efficient and use sustainable measures to be more efficient. So thanks.
Thanks, David. And that's again going back to some of those resources that are out there. And I don't have a good sense of how widely they're known and adopted by farmers, and maybe that's something larger farmers know about, but what's the adoption for smaller farmers that can help them reduce cost and improve efficiencies and sustainability? But what are the tools that help and how can we be getting information out to people? Maybe that happens through the farm bureaus or others, I don't really know, but are there some approaches that we could take through the food system action plan that would help support the growers in these kind of things? And then the other thing, looking at conservation easements, what are the tools that can help with working landscapes and revenue generation for farmers that also keep ag land in production? One thing, we are going to be working with the Department of Conservation to look at some of the recent data on transition of ag land to develop uses, because we want to look at what those trends are and make sure that, again, we've got some supportive policies to keep ag land in production and supporting growers. So food for thought. Paul, thank you. SWEEP tends to be more accessible to small farmers than Healthy Soils program. I think there's a whole thing of and also maybe with some of the new state funding, some of our state partners can help us with getting on top of what all these resources could be. David, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced is, applying for these grants and stuff can be a full-time job, and a lot of small farmers have problems with, and especially as the average age of a farmer is 57. And a lot of these grants are, done online and everything, and it can be cumbersome and for small farmers. So in response to that, part of the SWEEP grant has money allocated to, I don't remember what they call it, but it's something to address that issue, to get help to fill out the sweep application and that sort of thing. And that was a couple years ago, they included that piece, which is great. And so small farmers go after sweep money. It's a really good program. And it's not something that is, it's something that is in the budget, but not, I don't remember the terms, but it's not always in the budget. It has to be approved every year. And so we want to try and encourage more and more people to use it and eventually get it to where it's consistently in the budget and for long-term approval.
Thanks, David. I saw Paul put a link in the chat. Thanks, Paul. Okay, well, great. Next question. Grace, you want to go on to the next question?
Yep. So the next question is, what emerging opportunities are there that could help strengthen the food system? So this is, kind of where is the momentum going, or where could the momentum go to help strengthen the food system as it relates to, the viability of ag?
Shauna, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, so I don't want to speak too far out of turn here, but I know that in the May revise, it was a very small line item under California Department of Food and Ag, under their budget, about $12 million to fund urban agriculture. And I don't know where that is in the approval process. I don't believe it was approved with the July budget, but I don't believe it died either. And so if that funding makes it all the way through, that potentially could be a very unique and interesting source of funding to help strengthen the food system in the region.
Yeah, Shauna, just to say on that, it's part of the $200 million sustainable ag package that hasn't been fully agreed on. Will probably be after this legislative recess, hopefully. But what the exact amount is, I think, is still a little up for debate. But hopefully, it seems like there's a lot of support for it. So probably will be in the $10 to $12 million range.
And there's new funding also for farm to school programs, which is great. But Paul, you've been doing a great job tracking that. So that's a way we signed on as a support partner. But if there's any information we can help push out to and get to everybody to support that, that's part of us being organized as a region, to promote support and then just position people to be there. Brenda also, yes.
Hi, I'm not sure if this pertained to the previous question or this one more. I think one of the more exciting pieces that the whole region, and I can only speak to Sacramento, is really leaning into is making sure we support BIPOC farmers being able to enter the various systems that would need to access to be successful in farming and in food production, including, BIPOC's food businesses as well, or any BIPOC-led organizations, and just a commitment. And the first steps is recognizing that we need to be more inclusive to be sustainable for generations to come. So that I don't know if that's an emerging opportunity, if that's code for dollars, but I believe that the opportunity it lies in will be more sustainable for generations to come, leaning into inclusivity and equity. So to me, that's a really exciting place to be that's emerging.
Thank you, Brenda. And I think a lot of that maybe can apply also to our partners on the call, such as Kitchen Table Advisors and CAF and you know, California Capital and the, other groups and partners that help farmers with the planning tools and the financial tools so that they have fair access to those resources. And Judy, you're mentioning here local air districts offer incentives to replace aging equipment. And so I think that there's a lot of areas that we can support that. Thanks for mentioning that too, Judy. We're getting toward the end and people are dropping off. So we want to get to these one couple last questions. So Grace, you want to put the last questions up?
Yeah, I think the last question that we'll have up here is really around funding and capacity needs. So some funding, you know, has just been mentioned by Judy and Paul and David and others. So putting really any of those, you know, main priorities for funding and maybe what those resources or agencies are that are providing that funding. And then really anything else that you want to make sure that we have included, you can put in there or in the chat.
Yeah, you can send us information later too. We really want to capture as many specific things as we can to report back to the foundation and weave into a recommended set of priorities and line up with funding opportunities so that we elevate those priorities and support the partners. And it's, as Paul noted, you know, some of the funding we're not going to know for a little bit, but we want to be able to keep on top of things and help mobilize to support our ag.
Remain open. I'm going to share the last slide that we have here to conclude out since we're right at time. But continue to put your thoughts in there. It will remain open. Feel free to email us. Our emails are right there if you have any additional comments. And again, we'll be following up with an email for you all that includes some of these resources.
We'll synthesize all the meeting notes from the sessions and we'll get them out to everybody. And like Grace said, please keep in touch and we'll be in touch and welcome continuing input. I'm really grateful for all your great ideas and your time this morning. And feel free to join us too for any upcoming sessions too. It's all intersected. So tomorrow we'll be talking more about the environmental sustainability aspects as well through the whole food system. But thank you.
Everyone.